great things about the event. Hats off to Rod and crew and Bachi and everybody else involved. We, when Rod and Donna and I first spoke about this, I said, what a great idea to be able to incorporate it into channel focus. It was Rod's idea. And I think it fits so well. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the DEI. Tell us your story. So this is episode 4. Obviously, if you watched Ozark or Billions or anything like that, episode 4 is always the best. It kind of sits right in the middle and it kind of sets the rest of it up. So we have this one's going to be a little bit unique. Well, let me tell you how it started and what we're trying to accomplish. So we all do a lot of work in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think it's a hot topic right now, but every time I would go and somebody would get up on stage and they would be a professor, they would be a writer, an actor, and they would talk about it. They would talk about it from their lens. And I think when Donna and myself and Rod and a bunch of other people that were on the committee got together, we said, what's really missing? And the thing that's missing is context. What does it mean to all of us? What does it mean to all of us that are in the channel right now? How does it uniquely affect what we do, who we are, how we advance, how we go to work, etc.? So we embarked on a journey, and we embarked on this journey. And first we had Michael McCullough, and Michael McCullough told great stories. He told stories about going up to bat against Nolan Ryan and being the only African American on the field at that time. He talked about selling things as he traveled through Morocco, how he really got his start. It was a really, really great experience, and how he overcame some of the obstacles. Then we heard the opposite side. We brought on Megan Sullivan from SAP. Megan had a slightly easier path. Not that there weren't challenges, but she embraced diversity. And I think that it helped her in her career. And then, of course, we had Balaji Samarian, who's also on a DEI committee with Donna and I. And he just had a great story. He had a great story about, basically coming over from India, being first generation, basically some of the educational challenges, great athletics, kind of, again, embracing diversity and really rising above some of the challenges. But I had the opportunity in December to be able to go to the Women of the Channel. And at the Women of the Channel, I saw something that I never really seen before. And that was Donna Groth and her daughter, Katie, on stage talking from a multi-generational perspective. And it was a little bit of a different format. We're not going to repeat that format, but it really struck me how different the views are when you separate them by a couple of decades. And that's what we're really seeing now. I have a son that works for VMware. Not that it's an exact analogy, but we talk about it all the time. We talk about kind of him growing up in the industry, what I experienced at that age, et cetera. So, without me taking up too much time, I would like to introduce Donna and Katie. But before I do that, what I would like to ask you, as the audience, we have over 100 people, I believe, on a Zoom right now, is to be really, really interactive, to be able to use chat. I'm going to try to monitor it the best I can. And we'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to be able to take yourself off of mute, you want to ask a question live, I know Katie, Donna, and myself would welcome that opportunity. So Donna and Katie, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. This is so cool.
I know, it's so cool to see everybody on, right? So it's not like you really have an audience, as opposed to it's just having a chat between the three of us.
I agree. So Donna, why don't you, I think most of the people on the Zoom know you by now, but why don't you introduce yourself if you don't mind?
Yeah, hi, Donna Grojan. I lead worldwide channels for Aruba, which is a Hewlett Packard Enterprise company. And I've been in the industry channels for, I'm just going to say, when you get to my age, you just say 30 plus years. There's no need to say anything beyond that. And one just funny story is that we always joke around about how do we recruit, more people into the channels, right? Because you never decided when you were growing up, hey, I want to work in channels, because most people didn't know what it was. You just kind of fell into it. And so I always joke around that I had to have children in order to recruit folks into the channel. So my daughter, I'll let her introduce herself here in a second, but my son also works in IT, Frank. So he works for GitLab, and previously before that, he was with Nth Generation with a partner. So I feel like, I've done my part. I'm doing my part to recruit more folks into the channel. So,
you know what? You're doing more of your part. Katie, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name's Katie. I am a digital marketing manager supporting a channel community at Ingram Micro, a technology distributor. And I've been there for about 2 years. And that's pretty much my whole career thus far. So been in the channel for almost 2 years.
That's cool. Ingram, HP, Aruba, just great places to work. And I'm sure they embrace the culture as well. So Katie, tell me a little bit. With Donna and I talk all the time, but so here you are, you're growing up, you're making decisions as a young adult, you're watching your mom just be just be a rock star in the channel. How did it get started for you? What really got you interested in kind of working in technology?
Yeah, I think the first time I thought tech might be a cool industry to work in, I sat down with my mom and had a conversation a long time ago. I was a bit younger, and the biggest technology to me was self-driving cars. I thought that was the coolest thing. And my mom was like, well, the same people who are developing self-driving cars actually have goals to send humans to Mars. And then in that moment, I was like, technology is limitless. I used to think of technology as just computers, printers, hardware. But my mom was like, when you work in IT, you kind of get to see where the world is going and how it's evolving. So I think that really sparked my interest.
That's great. And I'm sure proud of your mom and what she's been able to accomplish.
Of course.
Of course. So Donna, you're watching this whole thing, obviously from a bird's eye view. Encouraging, discouraging, staying neutral?
For me, in terms of her career?
Yeah.
Well, let's all be honest. It's very hard to stay out of your children's lives, right? So hard to be completely neutral. But no, I think just like I do with other folks, you want people to succeed no matter what they're doing, and you want people to find a passion. And so for me, in discussions with Katie and my son and others, I'm always looking for what gets them excited, what are they passionate about, and then to some degree, how does that relate to roles in IT? Because I really do firmly believe that the world changes quickly, and this is an exciting place to be. And so I'm always kind of working the way back to what are things that you can do to that are lend themselves to people's strengths and passions. So so not very neutral when it comes to having an opinion about what people should be thinking about. So
nor would I ever expect you to. We had some great comments coming in from the crowd. I don't know whether you're reading them, but Rachel Tuller is commenting on how much she enjoyed the session at WOTC. Basically, Ern Bolton is just saying, hey, it's great to see everybody again. And that's kind of cool, because the Zoom format gives us the ability to be able to do that. And then Adriana Scalara is congratulating Katie for making the right choice and just having a fantastic 2 years. So let's keep that chat going. So I guess it's interesting because when I'm talking to my son, again, it's a little bit different, but he's like, All right, Dad. So, you started out, you got out of college, what did you face? How did you make that big step? How did you do that? But it was so kind of different when you and I were doing it back in that day. Probably me a little bit further back in that day than you were. But how do you translate your experience at that point of your career to Katie's?
Uh, to be honest, I didn't have any specific goals when I graduated from college. I was pretty much, I've always been somebody who's liked to work. So I was never really that into school. I was always about, okay, what am I going to do? What I want to, what kind of job do I want to do? And so I won't, so I didn't, I started working in advertising because or because I thought I wanted to be the client, working with ad agencies. And so, I said, okay, I'll go start working at an ad agency. And then somebody from college said, hey, I'm working at this really fun company, having a great time. Why don't you come over and interview for a job? So it happened to be Ingram Micro. And I interviewed for the job and got it. And I was very much about just doing what I needed to do in the next job. So I was always about, less about what am I passionate about, less about what interests me, was more about, hey, I've now found a path and I'm just going to work as hard as I can in this particular role. And I think what's different is that I wasn't really conscientious about a lot of things around me. I was just more about, okay, I'm supposed to go work for a company. I'm supposed to, it didn't really matter what the company did. It didn't matter what they stood for. And not to say that Ingram is a great company, but I didn't think about it then. And it was more about having a job, and more about having a job that I thought I could, ultimately do another job in and do another job in. And so I think, again, my perspective and what's, a little bit different that I see in Katie and, some of her friends in their generation is they're making conscientious decisions about who they're going to work for specific reasons. And, it wasn't about a job, it was about the company. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that fundamentally was different. And maybe others were different, in their first jobs. But for me, again, I didn't even know what Ingram Micro did. I didn't even know, the advertising company I was working for. It was like, oh, it's just advertising. It was just find a place to work. So I think the level of consciousness that people have today about, again, the company and what the company stands for is different than perhaps when I was looking for a job and deciding what my career was going to be.
True, true. Yeah, fit is really important. So obviously your son Jake is doing well because he's under the guidance of Annie Rook, who is chiming in for GitLab. All
So fun.
right,
Yeah.
Katie. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I mean it's a great point. So obviously you're an aspiring female with an ethnic background, and you're looking for a company. Fit is important. Culture is important. How did you evaluate companies when you were looking for a job?
I think the biggest thing I was focusing on, and someone I saw kind of ask this question in the chat about broadening skills or going deep into a certain area. And the biggest thing for me was finding a career with breadth when I started out as opposed to depth, because I wasn't totally positive what I wanted to do. I wasn't totally positive about what I was going to be good at. So I had some incredible internship experiences, and that led me to wanting to return to Ingram Micro because they just gave me so much opportunity to make the internship experience my own. And I knew that they were going to give me responsibility and let me kind of expand my skill set and grow however I wanted to. And I have a great manager who's always checked in with me, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Do you want to manage people one day? So I knew it was going to be a great place to start my career and build my skill set. But that was the biggest thing for me. I didn't want to specialize in one area. I also, when I was interning on digital, I felt like there were a lot of mini teams. There was SEO and analytics, there was email, social, web team. So I got to spend a little time with each of those groups. And then I also had the opportunity to shadow different departments. So I would spend a day with account management, client services, work with a graphic designer, and just kind of see what would be a good fit for me. And I ended up really enjoying digital and wanting to return back and stay high level. So that's what I do now.
I don't know about you, Donna, but I'm feeling like really bad right now because the focus and the maturity that Katie's talking about, and the methodical way she approached this is so different. I mean, I was looking for a paycheck, and that was probably about it. And then if I could do something with that paycheck and it was good company, I was okay with it. And that's why I joined IBM. You obviously put a lot more thought into it than I did.
Frank, we were looking to make sure we made enough money so we could get to the Thursday happy hour and then had enough for Friday, right?
Well, yeah, and the only reason I wanted to get to the Thursday happy hour in Atlanta when I was training with IBM is because they would give me free food as part of the happy hour, so I didn't have to worry about eating on my per diem either. But I agree. So let me go back to you, Donna, if I could. So it's a different world. When you and I were kind of starting out in the industry, I mean, nobody was really talking about diversity. Yeah. Everybody kind of had it on their mind, but it wasn't in the forefront. Do you think you had it tougher than Katie has it right now?
It's kind of interesting. I don't know that I had it tougher because I do think things are always relative, right? They're relative to periods of time. They're relative to what's happening. And I think I'm more conscientious today of when I look back at, the way the world was for me back then I probably realized it in the time that it was happening. And so I think for me, I think about back then, and I had a long career at Ingram, so I was there for 15 years. So I was able to hold many different positions. And so there were many times where I was the only, woman in the room. I was the only Asian in the room. And so it's interesting that I didn't realize then so much, and I wasn't as conscious about it then, but I'm way more conscious today about how unconscious bias comes into play when you're having meetings and discussions. Like, I think back, at times where I would be meeting, whether it was with vendors or customers, and, you walk into a room and somebody says to me, ni hao. And back then it was like, oh, okay, hi, and I'd kind of laugh it off. And I would say, honestly, today I was having a discussion, this came up in a meeting a few months ago with somebody, and they had said that, hey, I believe that I'm, that, we were talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and how, they believe that, how forward they are because they greet everybody, in their local language. And I said, yeah, but ethnically I'm Chinese, but nationality, I'm American. I don't speak any Chinese. When somebody says ni hao to me, I only know ni hao because I traveled around the world, just like I know bonjour, just like I know, hola. That's about the extent of Chinese that I know. And so it's interesting in that when I think about historically about things people have said to me, I always sort of took one of these in, then, yeah. But I never really said anything, right? And I think today I'm just more conscientious about that. So again, when it comes to diversity, I think that, and also being a woman, again, I think there were things that I just sort of took in, and it always caused me to pause. But again, didn't openly discuss it as much as today. When things come up, I'm certainly more conscientious of that. And I'm certainly more conscientious of having those discussions, with others and of course my children. So, yeah, because it is different.
It's out there. It's absolutely out there. And I know exactly, I guess I don't know exactly what you mean, but I've observed it. Maybe I've observed it from the other side. Katie, you just heard your mom kind of describe her experience. How does that relate to you entering into the work world? What's it like now?
I excuse me. I definitely think we are a lot more progressive nowadays, and I've never been scared to speak up when I think that someone's said something ignorant. Um, it doesn't bother me to kind of make a comment back on that, and I know that Gen Z is a little bit bold when it comes to discussing social issues nowadays, but most people in my generation are very socially aware, so I haven't experienced a lot of the same um, stereotyping, I guess to say.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's a great thing. It really is. But obviously, you have the courage to be able to speak out, which is also a great thing.
Yeah,
I'm
and I
going to
would. Oh,
I'm going to go back. Go ahead, Donna.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was going to go back to both of you on this subject. So, couple of the pieces of the chat right now are focusing on shadowing, mentoring, etc. So, and whoever wants to answer this, the value of a mentor. Do you have a mentor? Have you had a great one you wanted to say a few words about, and what really made that difference?
Well, I know that I've had mentors. I have multiple mentors still to this day, and I've had mentors. I think I started in my. Actually, I didn't start with a mentor until I was in my 30s, to be honest, my early 30s. And for me, I didn't. I had. I remember people talking about mentors, and I remember thinking, "Oh, okay, what is that about?" Right? And I don't think I learned to appreciate it until now. And I think, to Katie, that's one thing I always tell her now. You should, think about, mentors early in life, and a network, by the way, early in life. And for me, I think it's both. They go hand in hand, mentors and a network, right? And it's all about having individuals that you feel 100% safe and trust and have a conversation with about, whether it's an experience that you're having, whether it's coaching, whether it's a situation or scenario that you just want to get somebody else's opinion on how, they would weigh in or how they should think about something. Or when that somebody, the dialogue I was having with somebody who said, that they talk about, they greet everybody in their local language. And I, went to one of my mentors to say, now, should I have been upset about that, when in that discussion? But for me, I think it's important to, again, have mentors in different aspects, whether it's both personal, professional, and diversified. I mean, I have mentors that are men, women, older, younger than me, right? And just because I like that different perspective, but I would say it's critical so that you feel like you're not in it alone, right? So I think that's what also is having a network is about. But it's sometimes you're facing tough times or tough days or great days, and it's just nice to be able to bounce things off of others, right? That's how I look at it, and get coaching in any way.
I agree. So, Katie, you probably had the best mentor you could possibly ask for in your mom. But how did you use that mentorship or other mentorships that you might have had?
Yeah, so I was lucky to have a mentor from the day I was born. Obviously, my mom is a huge mentor to me. People she's introduced me to in the tech world, strong female leaders like herself. I had some amazing professors in college who I still stay in contact with today. Um, and then some of my biggest mentors too are my group of friends, because I just was so lucky to grow up with some of the smartest friends who are very open-minded. And because they're very open-minded and always want to have different kinds of healthy conversation, I think that they keep me curious, which is huge. So I always want to learn more when I'm talking to my friends, and my mom has given me great advice growing up. So it's definitely kept me open-minded to continue learning more if I'm ever feel like I'm stagnant, if I'm in a career where I'm not growing or learning, then that's when I would want to move on. So mentors have just inspired me to keep growing.
And I just have to comment because
Yeah.
I would say, you know, when I say mentors younger than me, I mean, Katie's a mentor to me, her friends. It's amazing to have an open dialogue with them. And you know, I'll give you just a real life example. At the time, you know, from a Black Lives Matter discussion, I was really coming from a place of all lives matter. And her and her friends, we sat down one night and had this dialogue about it. And I didn't really get it until they really helped me open my eyes to the fact that, you know, in some cases, I think just in the generation that I grew up, I'm used to looking at things as opposed to millennials looking at things through things, right? From their perspective, through their eyes. And that's what I find the subtle differences is when I'm talking to her and her friends, and my son and his friends, is their perspective is they put themselves in, you know, other people's shoes and other perspectives, while I still have a tendency to look at things at something. And so I have started to train my mind, you know, based on how, you know, their perspective. And, you know, sometimes we agree or disagree on certain things, but I've learned to look at it through a completely different lens than I would have if I'd never spent time with her and her friends, or again, millennials. So for me, I look at, you know, as we talk about, Frank, from a DEI initiative, and our efforts about how we really need to harness and, you know, and leverage the power of millennials, because they do have a different perspective. They look at things in a different way, and we need to get behind them, right? As opposed to just talking to them, you know? So anyhow, that's been.
No, I think it's a great point, because you're almost hitting on the point of a reverse mentor. So I'm sure Katie and Jake can give you advice.
Every day. Absolutely.
I know
I seek their advice for sure.
I do too. Katie, let's go on that point a little bit. So your mom mentioned, and I think it's a great point, that, you know, we're talking about diversity, and diversity often means the color of your skin, or, you know, your gender, et cetera, but can also mean your age. You know, being a millennial, being a young person in work, how can companies, whether it's Ingram or other companies, just really embrace all the characteristics that your mom just mentioned, the ability to be able to walk in other people's shoes, to be able to look at things differently?
Yeah, I said this at the Women of the Channel event, but a big thing for me as a young woman in tech was to look at people who have been at the company longer and just say, can we retire the phrase, that's the way we've always done it? Because there's a lot of young interns who come in with these great ideas, but they've only been there for 3 months versus someone who's been at the company for 20 years. And they're like, this is what works. Like, it's going to take a lot to change it. And it's going to be kind of a ripple effect if we do make any change. But I think that a lot of ideas that even interns come in with can have a huge positive effect if people are willing to test out those theories.
It's I mean, it's enlightening. I'm just going to stay there for a minute, because it seems like the flow of the chat is kind of going a little bit this way. How can companies keep you interested? I mean, or more importantly, we talk about recruiting, we talk about attracting talent. Obviously, Ingram's done a great job of doing that with you. How do they keep you there? How do they keep you motivated? How do they keep you interested?
I feel like I'm always doing something new. And I definitely venture out of my comfort zone when I work at Ingram. I always want to say, like, yes, just take on the project, take on the next role, even if you're not 100% sure that you can do it, because I know that I'll figure it out eventually and that it's going to be the best experience along the way. Um, and I know that especially early career, like there's room to make mistakes and you're always going to learn from your mistakes. So just taking on the next challenge, even like to give you an example, if they were like, we have a YouTube channel, we want to make it global, it has no engagement. Should we just like retire YouTube? And then I would be like, no, I want to work on that. Um, let's see what we can do to get this up to speed, or just, yeah, taking on new challenges, new projects, whatever it is, keeps me interested.
I think what you always share with me is that you feel limitless, right? That they give you the opportunity to, they give you the freedom. I would say freedom's not the word. They make you feel comfortable and sharing any opinion that you have, open to ideas. And I think the team that you work on, she loves her team that she works on because it's a very collaborative team. I like that. So I just, I think about the things that you tell me, and then I
Yeah.
think about those when I'm working with my own team and my own company about, okay, I gotta remember these things to make
Yeah, they
sure I
always ask
make
me
people
like,
feel that way.
what do you want to try? And sometimes I didn't even know, and my boss would be like, well, we haven't gone in depth for email before. Do you want to work on like nurture workflows yourself? Do you want to work on programming? So I felt like even having um, a boss who would like guide me in like different routes that I could take was very helpful, because sometimes I didn't know what to do next. So having them suggest things to me, and not, it was never like, oh, here's busy work, like we need you to do this. It was always, do you want to try out this new opportunity?
I think this is great. It really is. We're definitely giving McCullen, Bellagio a run for their money here. So I'm only kidding. They were great as well.
They were
So
excellent.
Donna, let's go back to you. So we talked about you kind of going into the industry. We talked about you as a mom. How about you as a leader? So I love the word you just used, limitless. Just basically how high is that bar? How high can I reach? And I think that's a great way to do it. How do you inspire your team? How do you lead your team to be able to not only think this way, but kind of execute?
I feel strongly that everybody understands their role as part of the team, and that they have the ability to do anything that they want to do in that role. I think it's my job to share what I think the vision is, and the strategy of where we're going, and then everybody understands their part, and they don't have to just stay in their particular swim lane. I highly encourage them. I don't want duplication of effort. I don't want lack of productivity. So let me just start there. That's where the lines are probably drawn. But I want them to explore the dialogues with each other about where we can go to achieve those goals, and to not think about, to take all restrictions off first, and think about, if you had a blank sheet of paper, what would you do? And then from that blank sheet of paper, we can kind of come backwards and say, hey, do we believe that can work or not work, right? Because, for HPE, it's an 80-year-old company. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of legacy there. And so it's very easy to say, well, we know we can't do that. And so we try to say, wait, let's not start there. Let's start from a position of blank sheet of paper. And then, think about, you've got no budget. You have, again, blank sheet of paper. What do you want to do? And so I think if you give the people the feeling, and that you support them, and that they can be limitless in their ideas, they come up with great stuff. And also, it's about going out and talking to others, talk to your friends in the industry, talk to, understand what the trends are, and are there things that we can uh, realize earlier than later. And I'm always a bit about, it doesn't have to be perfect. So if we can get it done and get it 80% of the way there, 80% of the way there is better than zero, right? And so nothing has to be perfect. So I feel like enabling the team to feel like that, first of all, I always have their back. that I'm always going to, regardless of the idea, regardless of what mistake is made, regardless, I'm always going to be there to say, I've got your back, and give them the opportunity to fail, and pick them up and learn from it collectively together. And so to me, that's how I feel, the team. And there's a couple of people on the call here that I work really closely with. You're free to chime in on whether you feel I represent that, but that's, with the team is how I feel I enable them to do that.
It's interesting because you work with you work for a company, Bill and Dave established it in a garage.
As you did
80,
once too.
Yes, exactly. 80 years old, but it's probably one of the most progressive companies around right now. I think it's a real credit to your leadership, but I think Antonio's got such a big part of it. I consider him a friend. I consider him a mentor. And I think you guys have a great thing going over there. Congratulations.
Yeah, we're excited about it. Tired, but excited.
Good. So Katie, Ingram's not exactly new to the market either. And I'm sure you hear it sometimes, just like your mother said, we've always done it this way. Or worse than that, we tried that before. That'll never work.
Yeah. How about your mother? Your mother created that.
How do you handle that, Katie, when somebody, basically, I don't want to use the word dismisses, but maybe that's the right word. Dismisses an idea just simply because they have a point of view where it just doesn't work around here. That's not the way we do it.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot more recently, they have taken interns very seriously. I think they're investing in new talent through this internship program. You're not going to be super productive when you're at a company for 3 months. So you're there to learn, and I think you're there to teach the company something as well. So I feel like managers are very opening to listening to new hires and to listening to interns about ways that they can change current routes. So I think that no one's ever really told me no, but they've been like, this hasn't been successful before. And then that's when it becomes a new project, but feel free to take it on. So I think by starting these new projects, it's been great to be like, wow, our social media channels have now seen this much more engagement, or we now have this many YouTube subscribers that we didn't have before. So just like little metrics, managers love metrics, but little things to show that there's improvement goes a long way. And then now we're always willing to kind of go into new channels.
You feel like sometimes you have to fight for it?
Not necessarily, as long as it's something that I'm willing to work on.
Yeah, it's good. It's a great way to look at it. Hey, Donna, one of the new threads on that chat are something you brought up a few minutes ago about being a lifetime learner. What does that mean to you?
Oh, first of all, well, I'm motivated by learning new things, and by the I think always looking at myself of what I can do better. And so to me, being a lifetime learner is being open to change, is being open to new thoughts. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a skill, but for me, being a lifetime learner is just being observant and being open. And so I feel like I'm always willing to say, hey, and if I say something that isn't correct, let me know. I mean, I do that a lot in meetings, like, oh, feel free to correct me, because I feel like I want people to know that I'm open to learning new things, and I don't know it all. And again, I've said I've been in this industry 30 plus years. I've been in this particular role 6 years. I work, with amazing people that way more than me. And so we all, sometimes I have a tendency to say, because I learned how something worked, 5 years ago, I still believe it works that way. And, guess what? 5 years, a lot's changed. And so I'm always happy to have somebody say, guess what, Donna, that changed 5 years ago, might have worked that way. And to me, that's what being a continuous learner or, learning every day is not only being willing to learn, but also, expressing yourself in a way that shows that you're open to that. So.
It's great. Maybe more people ought to subscribe to it. Katie, I want to open it up to the group, but I'd like to ask you a question if I could. So here you are, been Ingram a couple of years. Obviously, you're doing well. You're really trying different things, which is great, and you're kind of exploring and really developing your talents. Where do you see yourself when you're at your mom's age? What do you want to aspire to?
That's a tough question because like recently I've been thinking about all the different ways that my career could go. But when I started out kind of working in all areas of digital, I decided I didn't want to go down one route right now. Whether that was like just becoming a social media manager, I liked the idea of staying high level and working with all digital channels. So I figured if I was working with all digital channels and became really good at each piece of digital, then one day I would manage a team manage a digital team, manage people who all did those different things. But now I have no idea where I want to go. I support Ingram Micro's channel community, Trust X Alliance. So most of my digital efforts are for them. And it just I went to my first physical channel event with them a few weeks ago, and I saw how much love the members had for the community and how much passion they had and how much they cared to be a part of it and to evolve it in a positive way. And then I started thinking about it would be cool to do digital transformation for channel communities or even go the digital transformation route for companies one day. But I honestly have no idea where I'll go in the future, but I know that I'm just going to focus on learning new things. And if I ever felt like I wasn't learning something, that's when I would make a change.
I know one thing's for sure is I've been in a global job for, not quite 20 years, but almost 20 years. I've probably been to 40 different countries. She will surpass me and will be in more countries than me for sure by the time she's my age, because she's a travel bug. So, I say that because we talk about this all the time. I'm not very good about taking my vacation time. She's very good about, wanting to explore the world outside of work. And so, not to answer for you, Katie, but I do know that's when I think about, where will you be at my age or what right now, I that's one of the things I think about.
That's great. Meg Brennan, just gave a really, really positive comment. But I think the one that just came over struck me the most, because sometimes you do this. I know a lot of people just kind of do it to go through the motions. And I think the work that Katie, that your mom and I are doing, along with some other people, I think we're doing a little bit more of that, but it's always good to have it validated. And if you want to see the ultimate validation, read the message, the chat from Rachel with her 17-year-old daughter glued to the screen, listening over her shoulder and watching this. So thank you. So at this point, what I'll do is I'm going to open it up to anybody that wants to ask a live question. Now, this is normally where we have that uncomfortable period of silence. Hold on, Eleanor. Eleanor's jumping right in.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. So I'm Eleanor. I work at Riverbed, and for those that know me from my team on today, I'm definitely I think question queen is the nickname I've earned over here in my 2 years. But I have a question for both Donna and Katie. I'm curious when it comes to DE&I, and I'm curious if there is a view that's different from the generational difference here. what role do you think the corporation, if you will, our leadership, what is their role when it comes to D&I? What's the responsibility? Is there a responsibility? I'll leave it kind of open-ended like that. I'm curious what your thoughts are from that perspective.
Yeah, I can start. Thus far, we've definitely learned that diversity is not inclusion. When you look at big organizations, universities, big companies, they can all try and hit their quotas for hiring, admitting a certain amount of minority groups, but do those people feel included? Probably not. So I'm seeing a lot of efforts being taken nowadays to help make that happen and make minority groups feel included. And I think there's a million things big organizations can do to achieve that, whether that's listening to your employees, to your students, inviting minority groups to speak about their experiences, because if it's a sensitive topic, you don't really know how you feel about it. You're not going to be so inclined to share your experiences. And then also as an organization to be transparent about progress you're making, because if minority groups are going to be vulnerable and share their experiences that might not be so positive, then they're going to want to see change in action in exchange for their words. But those are big things that I think all organizations should strive for.
Yeah, I think Katie hit the nail on the head. For me, it's always the inclusion piece. I think that, I obviously work for a large company. There's a lot of, very formalized structure around DEI. But that doesn't always mean that it hits the mark, right? But I will give an example of something I thought was pretty amazing to help from an inclusion perspective. We had a leadership meeting, and it was great. They said, hey, we're going to take a 30-minute break. We want everybody to put on their walking shoes. This is when we were in the midst of COVID. We want everybody to put on their walking shoes, go outside, and I want you to download this podcast, and I want you to listen to it. And the podcast was literally, I think it was 6 people telling their own personal stories about being in a work environment that was offensive to them, that, how they were treated, how somebody had, in some cases, unconscious bias, and in other cases, conscious bias. And there were stories, again, to ensure that we could look at it through the individual's eyes, as opposed to, let's just tell a story like I read a story. It was about listening to the pain in some cases of individuals, of what they've gone through. And I think that, to me, is where we can all take it a step further, which is, it goes back to, it's one thing to check the box on, yes, we're going to create awareness, we're going to create awareness about what you can do, but there's another to then take it the next step to say, but how do we internalize it? How do we get individuals to internalize it? And I know we said it earlier, but spend time with millennials, because they really, it's a natural perspective. And again, that's where I believe there's opportunity, is the storytelling. That's why I think, the tell us your story, that, what Frank does here with the podcast is a great thing. The storytelling, to me, is what people resonate with, is because it's personal. It's about people being willing to, be vulnerable and to open up and to share. And I think that's the next step of where, corporations can go and companies can go, and what we all individually can do is be more vulnerable about our own stories. But second, how do we make that inflection point away from just looking at it as an activity and internalizing it, and actually being able to speak about personal experiences. So.
All right. Well, you can't get much better than that, Eleanor. Thank you for being a brave question.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for your honesty and openness today.
All right. Let's see if anybody's going to follow Eleanor. Any questions? We're running right up to the end of this right now.
I was just going to say, Donna and Katie, this is Annie from GitLab, and
Hi,
I am
Annie.
going to mentor and bring Jake over to the dark side. He's an SMB rep for us now, but I'm
Get
gonna
back into channels, Annie.
I'm gonna create a channel convert if it kills me.
All right, very good. Why don't we start out with the wrap up? And I guess Donna, Katie, what I'd like to ask you is, you have over 100 people on a Zoom right now. Katie, from your perspective, if they have a daughter or if they're just starting out in their career, what advice would you give them?
I definitely was lucky to have my mom in my ear about networking, but getting to know as many people as you can is definitely the biggest thing. Um, and also not really limiting yourself. I said this earlier, but when I was early career, I just wanted to shadow different departments and work in all areas of digital. And I didn't want to go down just one road before I knew what I might enjoy. So staying open-minded to where your career could go, meeting as many people as you can, because a lot of those people are mentors to me today, and we know how important it is to have a mentor around. So yeah, networking is the biggest thing, and then not narrowing your focus.
I love it. Keeping your options open.
Yeah.
All right, Donna, you can choose whatever perspective or both,
Yeah, no,
as a channel leader or a mom.
yeah. Well, I think as a channel leader and a mom, and I would say and I'll kind of wrap this back around diversity, right, and inclusion. And I think what's really important to me, because this is something that I do talk to my kids about, is it is really important that inclusion doesn't have to be just about related to diversity and equity. I always tell the story about how when I was a child, we had this field trip, and we went to this ice cream store, and my mother didn't give me any money to buy ice cream, but everybody else had ice cream, and so even though I already felt a little I always felt a little bit different because I was Asian and got teased a lot for being Asian. But in that moment, I just remember feeling so lonely because everybody around me was doing something and I wasn't partaking in it. And so for me, inclusion goes beyond just diversity and equity. It's in of itself something that's really important to me, is for people around me to feel included, or in what I'm doing, and mostly because the basics of it are just being kind to each other, right? Just being respectful of each other. And so to me, if I were to say, from a career perspective, the advice that I give is not only, should you build your network, et cetera, but be very generous with your time. Be very generous as a person. Be very inclusive about listening to people's opinions and making them feel like they're part of whatever the conversation is. So if somebody's sitting in the room and they're not saying something, don't call them out for that, but say, is there something that you would like to share? I just want to make sure we got your input. And if they don't have input, that's great. But I think it's just, to me, inclusion is just a really big deal. And Katie knows this because I would always make her go to school, her and Jake, with extra money in case they're on a field trip, so that they could buy something for somebody who was potentially left out. But to me, that's really important to me, and I'm really passionate about that.
No, it's fantastic. I mean, you guys are great. I just admire what you've both been able to do. And the phrase that comes to mind, I know it's a little bit overused, is a candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. So I think you personify that. So thank you so much. Thank you to everybody that's joined us. Let's give a big hand for Donna and Katie, please.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you.
All right.
Rod, so Rod, we're going to end it here. I don't know whether you have any words.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, fabulous job. I mean, it's something I've been passionate about for over 30 years, and you have to come across an experience to actually realize it. And what made me realize there was an issue, and I never thought there was one. I was 30 years old, and I was running the whole of West London for the Labour Party, and running all the campaigns for a major election, local elections. And in one borough, you chose two candidates in each of two seats. And there were two places where the running was really, really close. It was Labour versus the Tories, and it was going to be decided by a very few votes. In both places, we had a splendid white Caucasian candidate and a Indian candidate, both standing. People could vote for both of them. And in both cases, the white candidate won by between 30 and 40 votes, and the Asian candidate lost by between 20 and 25 votes. And at that point, I just went, hang on, there really is an issue. We really, really need to do something about this. And that's why I think sessions like today are so important, because you have to sit and really understand what it's all about and what other people are going through. Because for most of us on the call, we're not going through it. We're not seeing it. And so we really do have to understand what it is. And so Donna and Katie, thank you so very, very much indeed. And Frank, when are you going to get that TV contract? You know, the fireside chat guy at 10 o'clock every night on CNN. But thank you very, very much indeed, guys. Really, really appreciate it.